W poprzednim odcinku był z nami Ajman, Palestyńczyk, który nie boi się mówić, co myśli. Pokazał nam Hebron od środka, zamknięte ulice, zburzone domy, żołnierzy na dachach i codzienny strach, który tutaj wisi w powietrzu jak kurz. Ajman nie owija w bawełnę, mówił wprost, kto tu rządzi, kto się boi i kto kogo nienawidzi. Dziś druga strona barykady to Eliahu, Izraelczyk. Niełatwo było kogoś tutaj dorwać do rozmowy. Wielu odmawiało. Bali się hejtu, bali się może prawdy, bali się własnych sąsiadów. Kręciłem się wokół Makpeli, czyli groty patriarchów, miejsca świętego i przeklętego jednocześnie. Zauważyłem przewodnika z grupą turystów. Nie miałem już ani grosza, a bankomaty w Hebronie nie akceptowały moich kart. Mimo to pozwolił mi dołączyć do nich i co najważniejsze, zgodził się mówić, bez udawania. Jego historia to nie tylko mury i punkty kontrolne, to opowieść o tym, jak te mury wchodzą w głowę i co się z człowiekiem dzieje, kiedy zaczyna w nie wierzyć.
How are you? Mihao, you? Mihao. You? Nice to meet you. You? Anamala. Nice. Nice. Oh. Muhammad?
Jesteśmy w Hebronie, mieście, które jedni nazywają sercem Palestyny, a drudzy bombą z opóźnionym zapłonem. Tutaj na kilku przecznicach spotyka się więcej historii, gniewu i nadziei niż w niejednym kraju. Pod moimi stopami biegną ulice, które kiedyś tętniły handlem, a dziś są zasiekami i pustką. Po jednej stronie zamknięte domy Palestyńczyków, po drugiej żołnierze, kamery i posterunki. Tutaj nikt nie czuje się bezpiecznie, ani Żydzi, ani Arabowie. Każdy patrzy przez ramię, każdy pamięta coś, co kuje go w serce. Hebron to jak muzeum konfliktu na żywo. Można dotknąć, ale lepiej uważać. Dziś wejdziemy w te zaułki razem z Eliahu. Pokaże on nam miejsca, gdzie jego rodzina wierzy, że wszystko się zaczęło. A ja zapytam go, czy da się tu jeszcze żyć normalnie? Zanim skończymy, sam zdecydujesz, po czyjej stronie stoi twoje serce. Albo zrozumiesz, że w Hebronie serce i tak pęka zawsze po obu stronach.
This way. If you're a man, you should cover your head or wear a hoodie, either one, or a hat. Like this is fine. This room was added around 11th or 12th century, but this is the original Herodian walls, the original structure. Now, when we go in, if you look on the map on your brochure, you'll see a map of this building. Okay? Blue rooms are where we Jews have access to. Green rooms are the Muslim access rooms, okay? Now, there's a row, the word in English, cenotaph, also is called tomb monument, okay? When we go in on the left is the tomb of Jacob. Opposite Jacob is Leah. In a straight row past Jacob is Abraham's tomb. Opposite Abraham is Sarah. And on the Muslim half of the building is the tomb of Isaac. In a straight row, opposite each patriarch is a matriarch. Okay? Now, tomb monument, or cenotaph in English, it doesn't mean that the bones of the prophet are in that tomb monument. You understand? It's a marker, we think, from the Byzantine era and later. Okay? So let's see the tomb monument to Jacob. Now, there's one room on the right, past Jacob. Muslims claim that's the tomb of Joseph. They call it Yusufia. We Jews say the head of Esau was chopped off by the grandson of Dan, because Esau came to the burial of Jacob and mocked him. And his grandson of Jacob, the son of Dan, said, "You can't humiliate grandpa like that. You're my great uncle. I don't care. Off with your head." The head rolls in the grave. Okay, not the body. Okay, the body was said to have done bad deeds, but the head had spoken good praises of his mother and father as a boy. So this is what they say. The head deserved to be there, but not the body. Okay? This way, guys. Follow me. Rolling heads. Guys, you can come in. This is the tomb of Jacob. No, you were there. You saw Abraham there. Guys, this is the tomb of Jacob, okay? 7 years ago, I was guiding a tour here, and the management of the room inside is the Muslim sheikhs called the Walk of Hebron. But they can't get there on this side unless they're escorted by an army soldier, Israeli soldier. So I'm standing here with a group, and they're looking down a heavily armed Israeli commander, a fully dressed Muslim sheikh in all of his garb, and they're looking with mutual concern inside of the tomb of Jacob. A mother cat had given birth to kittens, okay? And they're both, oh no, where's the mother cat? We have to evacuate the kittens, of course, right? But where's the mother cat? And mutual concern. The tough guys, Muslim and Jewish, and everybody was concerned about the kittens. That mutual empathy, I'll never forget. I wrote it up on Facebook, and it became globally, like early days of Facebook, forwarded globally. Thousands of people saw that, and I'll never forget. The kittens of Jacob, okay? All right?
Jeśli to, co tu oglądasz, daje ci choć odrobinę refleksji, emocji, uśmiechu, ciarki na plecach lub pretekst, żeby rzucić wszystko i ruszyć w świat, to dorzuć cegiełkę na moim Patronite, śmiało. Dzięki wam mogę pchać się tam, gdzie Google Street View boi się wjechać. Będzie więcej historii, więcej zakamarków, więcej moich przygód. Solo po planecie, ale nie bez was. Link w opisie. Dzięki.
Guys, this is the tomb of Joseph in Muslim tradition. We Jews say the head of Esau. What do we Jews say? Where is Joseph buried? In Nablus or Shechem, next to a archaeological site called Tel Balata. Now, Muslims in Hebron, in Nablus, say that we took over the tomb of a sheikh called Yusuf and turned it into our biblical prophet. Again, your narrative. Dual narrative. Guys, this is the tomb monument of Abraham. By the way, this is the one spot, once you stand here with your camera, the one spot you can see from the Jewish side to the Muslim side looking through the bulletproof glass. If you stand right here, you can see the Muslim women on the other side. Okay, guys, I used to, before I was leading dual narrative tours, twice a year, approximately, I would have interfaith groups, and I was running an NGO called Jerusalem Peacemakers. My co-director and best friend, he has since passed away. His name was Sheikh Abdulaziz al-Bukhari. The Sheikh, Sufi Sheikh, I would add, would take half the group there. I would take half the group here, and we would do a shared prayer. We can hear each other till now. May the walls of fear between Abraham's family come tumbling down. Guys, don't you think Abraham would be slightly upset what his descendants are doing to each other? I would add in his name, the radical Jewish settlers who burned a Palestinian village 3 weeks ago in the name of Abraham. ISIS beheading people in Iraq in the name of Abraham. Radical Christian extremists in the name of Abraham. Don't you think Abraham is a little bit horrified what they're doing in his name? But we're all one family here.
Friend of God.
The friend of God. The friends. Right? And city of friendship in Hebrew, Hebron. Right? And yet, we're all one family. Not only the human family, but in this land, the Abrahamic family. The challenge is we happen to be a slightly dysfunctional family, right? We need a lot of therapy or dual narrative tours or something, right? This, the black square, the Kaaba. We Jews have a mezuzah on the door. Okay? Parchments written by hand by a sacred scribe. Now, I want to tell the story on at that far cloth, that black velvet cloth, where we think the actual tombs are. On Jewish holidays, that door opens and that becomes our synagogue. 10 days and 10 days, right? I believe on the inside, the Muslims have a much larger area. On the outside, we have a better garden space. On the inside, they have a much larger indoor space. Okay? I know sometimes they say those Israelis have 60%. I think they're including their garden space, perhaps. So, again, lots of reasons to gripe, grumble, and complain, you know?
Right.
Guys, it's been shrouded in mystery. Is there actually a burial place or not? When you were on the Muslim side, did you guys see this stone circle?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the stone circle is there. We Jews say that underneath that, we call it the Petach Gan Eden, the portal way to the Garden of Eden, the entrance of the Garden of Eden. I didn't say the garden, I said some kind of access point to the Garden of Eden. So we were always wondering, because remember for 700 years, we Jews were locked out of this space. What's underneath the hole? So the story of an Ottoman sultan who loses his sword down the hole. He sends his servants down the hole to fetch the sword. None of them make it out alive. Hundreds of years later, finally, after 1967, we Jews can investigate. Army is here, right? We take over in 1967. It's now accessible for us. And all the generals try to send their soldiers to squeeze down the hole. But guess what? It's a narrow entrance. They can't fit there, guys. The soldiers can't fit. Who's going to go down there? So there was a 12-year-old girl named Michal, a daughter of one of Moshe Dayan. You know Moshe Dayan, the general with the eye patch?
Yeah.
Famous general. So one of his generals, her daughter named Michal, said, I'll go down. I want to make daddy proud. Right? And so they say, okay, we're going to lower you down with a rope. If there's a problem, pull the rope and we'll yank you out of there. When my wife heard me tell this story, she said, it's a good thing no mothers were present.
Exactly.
What mother would allow their 12-year-old daughter down this mysterious hole where the last evidence was that Ottoman soldiers didn't make it out, right? But for the sake of history, it's a good thing no mothers were present. General, he has his honor. My daughter can make it down there, and she says, I want to make daddy proud.
Yeah.
So they lower her down with a rope. She goes through a tunnel, number 5. She goes through a tunnel under the tomb of Isaac. There's steps that go up. Guys, you see the diagram? Come closer.
Yeah.
Tunnel, steps that go up. The steps end up behind the tomb of Isaac under this green square structure. Yeah. The steps go up underneath this carpet. It's blocked by a stone at the top. She gets to the top of the stairs. She knocks 3 times, trying to see if there's an exit. She's terrified when she hears knocking back. Ah, she runs out. There's ghosts. She runs out. Turns out an Israeli soldier was standing here. He said, I heard knock knock from below. I thought Abraham was coming to say hello. So I went knock knock right back. Right? Right? There was no communication from one end of the hall to the other. The soldier, that's a rational explanation. Guys, that was in 1968. A few years later, 1981, 5 men, including the spokesman of the Jewish community of Hebron, we're going to meet him shortly. He was here with 5 men during Slichot. When is Slichot? It's the week before Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. They notice that the Muslim guard always goes to sleep. He's sitting here always, but he went to sleep for an hour before his sunrise prayer. Let's see if he does it again. Sure enough, the next day, the Muslim guard is gone. Okay, the Muslim guard is gone. And they get to work. Hammers and chisels, they lift up the carpet. There's a stone entrance. You understand? No need to squeeze down over here, this stone hole. There's actually simply a stairwell that you can walk down. When it's not blocked from above, you just walk down. And that's what they did. They walked down the stairs, back through this tunnel, under the stone circle. Amazing. But no evidence of a burial cave until somebody notices a breeze, air. They notice that the air is coming from a hole in the ground in the corner of the tunnel. They notice a few loose rocks and they manage to pry open the loose rocks. Guess what? It's an entry to another room. They crawl in, full of cobwebs. And guess what they discover? Not just one, but a double-chambered burial cave. In other words, exactly what the Bible, the Torah said should be down there is what they discover. Can you imagine the goosebumps? Can you imagine the excitement? They weren't going to desecrate the bones for DNA testing. You understand? But just the fact that the double cave, the Bible describes a double cave, that's what they found. Up above, the Muslims have rushed in, trying to get back. And what's going on in there? So they say, hurry up and get out. They rush through the tunnel, up the stairs, they put the stone entrance back, they put the carpet back, the Muslims rush in. Everything looks normal, but, somebody left a hammer with soil on it behind. The Muslims figured out they'd been down there. There's a near riot. The Israeli archaeological authorities say, listen, calm down. We admit we were down there, not to desecrate a Muslim holy place, it's our holy place too. Sorry, it's our holy place too. We're not here to desecrate, but just to document. To prove our good intentions, we're going to come back a second day with the Waqf, the Muslim leadership. A joint archaeological survey is done the second day to show nothing bad, nothing harmful. And for the sake of keeping the peace, the army agrees at the entrance below this carpet, it's now going to be cemented shut. In other words, not another living soul has been down there since that day in 1981. That's the story of the double burial cave. Now, our tradition says that when a soul dies in this world, it first comes to commune with the prophets, the matriarchs and patriarchs, before ascending to the next world. Could be that's what they mean by entrance to the Garden of Eden, the portal way. Metaphysical meets the physical. You understand? And that's the spot here. Many traditions of people spiritually inclined of great light emerging like a powerful energy. When I go there, I breathe, I lean down and I breathe the air. It's earth. It smells like earth. And Hebron is actually known as the city of earth in the Jewish mystical tradition. Jerusalem, fire, and Hebron is the earth. Tzfat, air, Tiberias, water. The four holy cities.
What a coincidence for me, because my name is Michal.
Oh yeah, Michal?
My daughter turns 12 next week.
Wow, really?
And I was born in 1981.
1981. Wow. What a coincidence. But this is the tombs of Jacob and Leah. Okay, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca in the mosque side. Right? Guys, let's go out the building. Follow me. Okay, we have an ambitious agenda and very little time. Let's go. Aywa! Alhamdulillah. They just means Israeli control. Shalom, Mashokem. Tov. אני אף פעם לא אמרתי לא לקנות. כל שבוע, מה שלומך? Okay guys, follow me this way. Okay? I'll tell you why at the end of my tour, why it means martyrs. It's not what you think. Okay? It's not about Israel-Palestine conflict, martyrs. But it's the beginning of a street called Shahada Street that the Palestinians would call Apartheid Street. From that point where this annoying salesman, he's not allowed, or any Palestinian, not allowed this past this point, except for sewage workers. Why is that the case?
Zanim dostałem pozwolenie na nagrywanie i dołączenie do grupy od Eliahu, słuchałem, jak on opowiada swojej grupie historię Barucha Goldsteina. W 1994 roku Goldstein otworzył drzwi oddzielające synagogę od meczetu i zaczął strzelać do muzułmanów. Zabił 29 osób, ranił ponad 150. Eliahu przedstawił go jako bohatera narodowego, bo rzekomo coś słyszał przez drzwi i uprzedził atak. Dla niektórych Goldstein do dziś jest męczennikiem, obrońcą Żydów. Na jego grobie długo odprawiano pielgrzymki, modlitwy, zostawiano kartki z prośbami. Takie pielgrzymki są w Izraelu tematem tabu. Policja i służby od lat próbują je ograniczać. W poprzednim odcinku Ayman opowiadał nam, jak to wygląda ze strony palestyńskiej. Jeżeli nie widziałaś tego odcinka, zapraszam Cię serdecznie po skończeniu tego do zapoznania się z tym tematem.
Because when the shops were open, you understand, during the Baruch Goldstein shootings, a lot of this was closed. But in 1997, Hebron Accords, everything was reopened, all the shops. But in the second Intifada, from 2001 to 2004, there were repeated terrorist attacks, including at this spot in 2002. Stand aside, this guy's filming here. Stand aside. Guys, look. Rabbi Shlomo Isaac Shapira was was walking here with a few of his children. He's not even from Hebron. He's an Orthodox Jew from Jerusalem, visiting Hebron. A Palestinian gunman comes through what was then an open gate. He comes through with a machine gun. He shoots and kills a rabbi at this spot. After the rabbi was murdered, the army closes the shops, Palestinian shops, said we have no way to distinguish between a gunman and a legitimate shopkeeper. Now compensation would be offered, money would be offered, but of course they would never accept it from the occupation authorities. You understand? Now it wasn't an overnight policy of creating this ghost town, as they call it. You know, they call it ghost town. It is empty. It wasn't, it was each time there was an attack, a little section was closed. This was 202. Around the corner, a Jewish couple in 203 were killed. Okay? And I'll show you where a baby, a year in 2001, what happened with the baby. Okay? Each incident led to little closure till by 204, the whole stretch of road here that they complain about and say, legitimately, if I'm a shopkeeper, they call it ghost town. Okay? And not fair from their narrative. Okay? Israeli narrative is it's a legitimate security measure taken to protect Jews who live in Hebron and Jews who visit Hebron. Guys, follow me. Okay? That's a bit of Israeli narrative.
Exactly.
Welcome to the Jewish quarter of Hebron. Guys, this is the largest Jewish neighborhood in Hebron. 500 out of the 1,000 Jews who live in Hebron lived in the Avraham Avinu quarter. It's called our father Abraham quarter. If you look on the other side of the street that we're walking on, Muslim cemetery. Okay? Palestinian neighborhood. But in the middle of that, Jewish neighborhood. In 2001, a father is pushing his baby in a baby carriage. A sniper fires. The father's injured. What? The baby, her name means shimmering flame. Guess what this is a memorial to? The 1-year-old baby, Shelhevet, who was killed at this spot. Memorial, bullet holes, baby carriage, a flame. A rebuilt synagogue. We're going to go and sit in the synagogue now, okay? But this is a picture of the Soviet Jew who came here in the 1980s. He found that the synagogue had been turned into a trash dump and a sheep and a goat pen. So his name was Ben-Zion Tavger. And he made it a one-man mission to clean up the destroyed synagogue that had been here before 1929. You understand? This was the main Jewish quarter of Hebron. So when Jews came back here, are they stealing Palestinian land? No, they're kicking out goats from rubble. That's what had become of the Jewish quarter. Okay? And they rebuilt this synagogue. And I'm going to take you now and show you that synagogue inside. Okay? He's a spokesman of the Jewish community of Hebron. He's going to come in a few minutes. Just to say, this is a rebuilt synagogue of an original version that was built in about 1540. The Jews were fleeing Spain, right? In 1492, the Inquisition, the Christian Catholic Inquisition pursued the Jews everywhere. You know where was the safest place for Jews? Istanbul, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans welcomed the Jews fleeing from Spain. They said, if you're an Ottoman subject, of course, Hebron or Jerusalem or Tzfat in the Galilee, you understand, the Holy Land is Ottoman. So you're an Ottoman subject, you can resettle. This is how a great wave of Jewish return to the Holy Land began under the Ottoman period. And they come and built this synagogue in 1540. The synagogue stands up in its entirety until 1929, 400 years, Jewish life in the Jewish quarter here. The synagogue is destroyed in riots that I'm going to talk about in an hour in the Jewish Museum. Okay, we're going to go to a museum of Jewish history just to say that a Jewish boy had come here and managed to take out 2 of the original Torah scrolls for safety before the mob destroyed the synagogue here. In 1983, that Soviet Jewish hero, the physicist who escaped the Gulag, he was sent, by the way, to the Gulag in Siberia. They put him in Israeli jail because he tried to clean, it was a closed military zone. You can't just clean up a synagogue without permission. He makes a statement from jail. You think Israeli jail scares me? I was dealing with the KGB in Siberia. Okay, this is a picnic for me. Okay, they free him. He rebuilds the synagogue. And in 1983, when they dedicate the synagogue again, an old man steps forward and they hand him the 2 Torah scrolls. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, I was that boy who brought them out. And it's been my lifelong dream to bring them back. And guys, take a look. If you want, before our speaker comes, here are the Torah scrolls. Guys, these are the 2 original Torah scrolls. Guys, just so that you understand, this Torah scroll is 150 years old. This Torah scroll, by the way, it's closed. It's a Torah scroll, but with a cloth, wooden, metal, and cloth cover around it. Okay? But there's scrolls there. There are the 5 books of Moses written on animal skin parchment. The older Torah scrolls were written on deer skin parchment. The new Torah scrolls written on cow skin parchment. Okay? Now, why do the Jews of Hebron want to show you these Torah scrolls? Usually in synagogues, they don't open it up to non-Jewish tourists because they want to make a statement. The world is saying we Jews are colonial settler occupiers. No, Zionist colonial settler occupiers, right? Stealing Palestinian land in order to live here and pray here. They're saying, no, no, no. These Torah scrolls are linked to the Jews who once lived here, and therefore we are connected by these holy books to the Jews who lived here. The world, like when the Afrikaners were in South Africa, or the British Raj in India, or the Belgians in the Congo, right? You could say that's, or the Americans in Baghdad or Afghanistan. Those is foreign colonialism. But here, the Jews are saying, no, we're indigenous. We're from here. We didn't come to steal Palestinian land. We're not foreign occupiers. We're indigenous Jews coming back to our ancient capital, Judea. The name Judea is the definition of what it means Jewish. And these Torah scrolls are a link. Okay, guys, I want you to take a seat. And we're now going to meet with the official spokesman. And he was one of the 5 that rebuilt this synagogue. Sorry, one of the people. He helped the Soviet Jew to rebuild this synagogue, guys. And if you want to ask him about what it was like to go in the cave in the Machpelah, Professor, he wrote his PhD, are known on the Tomb of the Patriarchs. He's the leading authority of that building in Israel. Of course, the book is in Hebrew, okay? We need to put it in English, but without further ado, Noam Arnaud, spokesman of the Jewish community of Hebron. This way. יש לנו מיפן, יש לנו מאמריקה, מפולין, הוא גם מפולין, הוא מקרקאו, הוא עושה דוקומנטריה על חברון יהודית. Please, everyone.
My grand-grandfather was from Poland. They lived in a place called Zalushin. It's near Łódź.
Central Poland.
Fortunately, they came here in the 20s. So this is how they escaped. Well, I begin with a personal story that connects me to this very place we are now here. I don't know, I think most of the people here remember 1967, or some of you do remember. I remember before 1967, me as a Jewish child could not have visited here, not to live here. We could only dream about Hebron. Okay,
as Israelis in the center of the country, they could never come here.
I lived in not very far from Ra'anana, if you know, it's not very far from Tel Aviv. The state of Israel was very, very small at the time. And we learned in the Bible about Hebron, the fathers and mothers, and we could only dream about it. Mysterious place of the shrine of the ancestors. At the same, we could only dream about the Western Wall. Jews were not allowed even to visit as tourists. Not in East Jerusalem, not in Hebron, not in anywhere in the ancient homeland of the Jewish people. So it was a place of dream, a place of thoughts and willing, but we could not even imagine that someday we are going to be there. And then it happened in 1967. Mr. Nasser, the president of Egypt, declared, it was in the day of independence of the state of Israel, "Dear Jews, get ready, I'm going to throw you into the sea." We said, wow, it's still May. May, it's too early to go to the sea. And then he said, okay, but you are not going to go back. You're not going to return. He made an agreement with the Syrians in the north, the Jordanians in the east, from three sides. The west was open, which is the sea. We were in a shocking situation, abandoned by the world. No one in the world wanted to help. We felt like, in the end of the days, the state of Israel was very small, maybe 10 miles wide. This is from the sea to the border. I was living quite close to the border. Many of my neighbors were Holocaust survivors. They remember the Holocaust only 22 years before. It's not so long time. It was really frightening situation and period that I remember as a child. I asked my parents what we were going to do. They say, we don't know. So we dug a hole in our backyard to hide. You can't imagine. I remember that hole in the backyard, in the earth. And then the war began. Now, we didn't know what's happening. We saw Jordanian aircraft above us bombing Kfar Saba, which is quite near to us. People were killed. The first night was in the darkness. We didn't know what's going to happen. In the second day, we began to hear some rumors that maybe we are victorious. We didn't know. In the third day, we heard the unforgettable words in Hebrew, Har Habayit Beyadenu, Temple Mount is in our hands. We liberated our holiest place in Jerusalem, the Holy of Holiest, Temple Mount. You know how 2,000 years Jews were dreaming about this moment, and me as a child was privileged to live, to be not there, yes, but to hear it online. No one can forget it. No one can forget it. And the day after, Hebron, we are back in the place of our fathers and mothers. In 6 days, can you imagine? Israel was on the Golan Heights, in Sinai, all Judea, Samaria, Jordan Valley, and the most important sites, Jerusalem and Hebron. Wow, it's unforgettable period. Now we begin to tour the land. Going to first, of course, the Kotel, Western Wall, and then Rachel's tomb. Can you imagine? We could say to Rachel, our mother, what Jeremiah, the prophet, said, "Weep no more, Rachel, because your children did return to the place, to the borders." V'shavu banim ligvulam in Hebrew. And then we went to Hebron. We saw this magnificent structure above the cave, where our fathers and mother are buried. So many Jews are called Abraham, Sarah, Yitzhak, Rivka, Jacob, Leah. Jacob is Israel. Jacob is the first man in the world called Israel. And we are the nation of Israel, the state of Israel, here with our father Israel. Wow. So after this great experience, we began to tour Hebron. This was a market, very interesting market, with many items that we didn't know about. Like, can you imagine, camels that were slaughtered and hanging in the butcher? Okay, many interesting things. And then here, a place of destruction, a place of trash and garbage and dirt and stinking. And the guide said, This is the Jewish quarter of Hebron. Was left. The Jews were slaughtered, murdered. The Jewish quarter was destroyed. The synagogue here was turned to an animal's pen. And this is what we saw. Donkeys, sheep going around, stinking area, mosquitoes and flies. This was a shocking experience. After the great victory, now what's going here? Then I first I understood that this victory, it's a mission for us to do something, to implement. Okay, I was too young to do something about it, but we had, thank God, Rabbi Lebinger, he was a rabbi, and he organized the first group to return to Hebron, and the Jews came here to Hebron. They tried to find a place to settle down. They could not. So they rented a hotel from an Arab person, and they spent the Passover, holiday of Passover, first time back in Hebron. Later on, the government decided, first they got some rooms in the police station or administration building, and then built Kiryat Arba, which is a town close to Hebron. And then, only in the middle of the 70s, we came here. The first was a professor named Tavger. He came from Russia. He was a Zionist activist in Russia, and he made it immigrating to Israel from communist Soviet Union. Very, very difficult mission to do. He came here. He began to dig here in the ruins of the synagogue. I came to help him. I became his aide, and later on, we got the permission to excavate, to dig and to excavate the synagogue. I was in charge of the excavation here. This was my first archaeological project or mission in Hebron. And as you can see, thank God, we discovered the synagogue. What you see, the pillars here are original parts of the original structure. You see here the ark here, the Bible. This is original part. The whole building was covered with ruins, but everything was buried. And what you see around you is original part of the ancient synagogue built 500 years ago by the Jews. They came from, actually they were expelled from Spain. They came here, they built a synagogue. And it was named after Abraham Avinu. By the way, a few years ago, there was a visit here of the Spanish foreign minister, a lady called Trinidad Jimenez. I don't know if you have, she is not now in office. And she came to visit. And I had a few minutes with her. And I said, you see, Mrs. Jimenez, this synagogue was built by the Jews who came from Spain, were exiled from Spain. Now, what do you want now? You want to exile us back to Spain, or what? And she was quite, she didn't know what to answer. She said, no, I don't want to expel anyone. I just want you all to live here in peace. I said, great, this is what we want. But now tell it to the Arabs that they should also say, we are willing to live in peace with everyone. This is what we want, and we wait for the Arabs to say it. I must tell you, I know Arab leaders that this is what they want, and this is what they say. And I have a dialogue with Arab leaders. One of the most honorable leaders of the Arab community of Hebron named Sheikh Jabri. And this is what he said. You can see it, he said it publicly. He said to me, for me, you are not a settler. For me, you are a neighbor. Okay, this is what we came here before. Now, what's the problem? The problem is the leadership, the official leadership that was nominated on the Arabs is the Palestinian Authority, which is actually based on a terror organization named PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, and their official agenda is one: kick the Jews out. and make this terrorist and corrupt regime on the Arabs. This is the problem of the Arabs and of us. But if you somehow let's say try to concentrate on what we here want and say, and I'm official spokesman for the Jewish community. That's what we say. We came here to rebuild the Jewish community and the Jewish quarter of Hebron. Instead of destruction and death and terror, bring life, bring redemption, bring children, bring happiness, bring everything. Also to our Arab neighbors. And when we have the dialogue with our neighbors, this is what we say. We share the common interests. So this is the motto and the idea of redemption of Hebron, bringing back life to this holy, ancient place. It's the most ancient Jewish community in the world. This is the cradle of Jewish history. This is the cradle of Jewish people. Father and the mothers, they actually created the Jewish identity, a Jewish entity and faith for mankind. I believe all of you share with me the same idea of having connection with Abraham, the symbol of faith in the world, the symbol of values, of mercy, of everything. We all share. It's the same Father. So we want to bring life and happiness to this place instead of destruction and terror and the terrible thing that happened here. So this is the idea. This is the idea of the Jewish community of Hebron. You know, after the Hebron Accord, I don't know, did you see the map, Eliyahu?
Yes, H1, H2. Yeah.
Okay. This is the map of Hebron. It's about 22,000 dunams. But all the green part of this map, as you see, is forbidden for Jews. The green color. It's closed for Jews.
Jews allowed in the green.
Jews are not allowed. Not only Israeli Jews. Even if there are some Jewish people among you, you are forbidden as by definition. Maybe you will break the law, but this is by definition. Now, what is possible for Jews to live in this blue part here?
That's the 3%.
It's 3% of the town
H3.
that are allowed for Jews to live, to exist. Again, for Jews. It's not Israelis. It's a question of religion. This is because the Palestinian Authority prohibits Jews as Jews to step in. So this is the situation here. Some people may call it a ghetto. Okay, I don't speak about the ghetto from the Holocaust, but a ghetto from the Middle Ages. Okay, it's a closed area. The Jews are allowed to live in, not get out. So this is the situation. So when they speak about how the Jews destroyed the economy of Hebron, for God's sake, from this corner, if you go to the whole city of Hebron, if you go up the hill and see, Hebron is a magnificent economy. Hebron is the most rich city in Judea and Samaria. Thousands of factories and malls and shops and everything. And the Jewish colony is here, which looks very, let's say, modest. No facilities, no shops, no nothing. Only the Jewish quarter and the holy sites, the shrine of the fathers and the synagogue and the cemetery, some holy sites that are here in this area. So this is the situation of Hebron today. Okay, some people really don't understand, and they ask me, what you group of crazy people do in this in this spot here. Are you very crazy? Okay, maybe, but we live for the idea, and people, you know, when you have something to live for, it can cover many problems. You live for an idea, you live for something great to do, for a value. Okay, this is what we feel here. By the way, if you take this map and turn it like this way, and try to imagine this is the Middle East, and this is the state of Israel. Okay, it's quite similar. And you can ask this, what the state of Israel is doing in this area. Okay, but this is the Jewish homeland. Some people would prefer to have a Jewish homeland in Switzerland, but Moses brought us here, not Switzerland. So this is the Jewish homeland. This is what we have, the Jewish history. The settlers are regular people who share the same values like everyone else, the value of freedom, of justice, and I think it's a common value that terror should not win. And what happened here to the Jewish community in 1929 was a terror action that brutally massacred 70 Jews, and they were burned and raped and butchered. And we believe that this terror should not win. And by bringing life to this place, this is the idea we want to emphasize. Okay, as Eliyahu said, I wrote a PhD work, thesis, about the history of the tomb of the patriarchs, a magnificent history beginning in the Middle Bronze Age, the era of the fathers and mothers, going on for the Iron Age, the Kingdom of Israel, the First Temple period, the Second Temple period, and the Byzantine period. And I found something very interesting. This is what I'm going to finish, that the three religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, fight each other or disagree with each other on many things. But one thing is common, that the fathers, the forefathers and foremothers did exist, and they are buried here in this place, in the shrine, and they are the source of faith and values to mankind. So this is an idea that unites most of humanity, even today. I think this can be a source of connection, a source of dialogue, a source of peace. This is my mission to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, please.
Guys, questions? We have questions. Yeah. When we were in the Muslim quarter,
Yes.
our guide was saying that maybe some settlers were throwing acid and rocks down at a certain part in the market. How does that square with the idea of moderation and peace for all? I don't understand that.
You're right. Well, I have to be honest. I cannot claim that such a thing did not happen. Okay? I can be honest and say that for every stone you see that was thrown on Arabs, there were 10,000 stones were thrown against Jews. All the ways around. Every day. And if you want, I can send you pictures of cars and buses that are being attacked every day and every night. All around this area. And stones. And miraculously, many people get out from the whole car is smashed. So I cannot say that such a thing did not happen. Maybe as an event or something like this. Okay, I'm sorry for that. It must not happen. I condemn it. But we put the things in proportion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question about the map. Again, in the Muslim area, they showed us the exact same map, but the map it looks like Hebron is this big. So it looks like the Israelis have a third of the map.
It's a good
So
question.
my question is this like Hebron County and not just Hebron City? You know what I mean? Like, what's the difference?
This is the urban municipality of Hebron. It's not Hebron County.
There's the
This is the city. This,
district.
you are right, because they show a map including this part. I know this map. I know this map.
Okay.
This is a good example for manipulation. And you are a victim of manipulation. So,
One question. We were walking in H2, H1, and now through here, and everything that I saw, it was very, very dirty, except this part. This part is very clean.
even in the Hebron Accord, it was declared that the Palestinian municipality is responsible for facilities all over the city. And here they don't clean, they don't pay too much attention to cleaning in this area. That's a fact. That's a fact. It's a sad fact. We still hope, and we still want to build a better future for our children. 2 days ago, thank God, my grandchildren got married. Can you imagine? So, toda rabba. So, okay, we have to do something for the better future. My hope, I'll speak about Hebron because this is my task, okay? That Hebron will be free and open for all, and that everyone can shop and live. And by the way, we have holy sites in other parts of Hebron. They are mentioned in the Hebron Accord, but Jews are not allowed to visit them today. So Hebron can be, as I said, a source of peace. I will include with one very symbolic point. When there was an agreement, a peace agreement with Israel and Arab states, 4 Arab states, how it was called 3 years ago, Abraham Accord. They took the name of Abraham from Hebron to symbolize the peace in the whole world. So let's make Abraham a symbol of peace, first of all here, and then a symbol of peace for humanity. Thank you very much. And thank you. I wish you the blessing of the fathers and mothers be with you. Okay. Be well. Be well. Bakasha, kol tu.
This way, my group, this way, follow me. All the Jews should leave, all the Arabs should leave, you understand? But nobody's leaving. That's the reality. We're part of a story that we each have. Let's weave somehow. Can we weave together a shared story where the other has a place? Not domination, not triumphalism, but of connection. The Palestinians, Muslim cemetery, Jewish neighborhood. Okay? If you want to know why are the shops closed, I already told you. Because of attacks, of shooting attacks, and suicide bombings, but this is the official explanation. And this is the same map that Noam showed us. This is the 3%. Okay, remember, this is H2, this is H1. But Palestinians have access to all of H1 and all of H2, but this stretch of road, this is my tour on this little area. And now we're walking up the road, and now we're going to be in this blue bubble for the last part of my tour. Okay, that's where we're headed. Again, Israeli army base at the top of the hill. See that? Okay? This way. This is some pro-Israel graffiti artists from Brooklyn, New York. They're called Artists for Israel. They did this painting. But I'm actually going to talk about that chicken, but the rest of my group. The Jewish kids of Hebron painted their own political graffiti. They noticed walking around the streets of Hebron all kinds of weird and interesting characters. So they said, oh, there's a mother Hebron chicken. Okay, that's a mama Hebron chicken. And here are her chicks. Okay, it says we're all happy in the Hebronite chicken coop. And you have different categories of characters. You have the Jewish donor chickens. See that? Arab suicide bomber chickens. Okay? Even the rat gets a category. Right? There are rats here. The soldier chickens. See that? Yeah. And there are you guys. The tourist chickens, the hat and the camera. Yeah. You guys are part of the scenery now, okay? You being here, you also give color, okay? Now, I was so disappointed they left out a key category, the tour guide chickens. So maybe that's us getting our own square. What do you say? Yeah. And that's our mama. Say hi, mama, Hebron chicken. Say hi to your mama today. Today, that's your mama. Bark, 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 bark. Facebook Live broadcast in Army base. That's the Army base. No Facebook Live broadcast, okay? No uplinking it to Hamas, all right? If they're wearing red berets, that's paratroopers, okay? Now their fighting symbol, we're going to see it around town, is called the snake with wings. According to legend, in the 1948 war, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt said the Israelis will have paratroopers. When they were forming a paratroopers brigade, he meant it as a curse, like it'll never happen. Like when a snake has wings. They took that curse as their fighting symbol. The strike force, the snake with wings. Got it? Yeah. The flying strike force. Paratroopers. This building, the older structure is under that line. You see the line there? Okay, it used to house a Palestinian boys' school, Osama School. Did they mention it? Now it houses a yeshiva. This 300 young Jewish men studying Torah and Talmud and Bible there, living in the dorm space on the right and the big study hall in the middle. What they don't mention is before it was Osama Boys' School in the Jordanian years, it used to be a study center of a rabbi in the 1800s. So I'm not denying, yes, it was an Osama Boys' School, but no mention of the other layer of history, of Jewish history underneath it. Okay, so it's a sandwich, Jewish, Palestinian, Jewish in one building. Okay, so my point is both sides are correct. It depends always on which stratum of history you're emphasizing.
Kind of a microcosm of your
A
history
microcosm, exactly, a microcosm. It's just this road that they can't walk on. Guys, remember I told you what's the Israeli narrative? Look at number 4. Liberation, return, rebuilding. Did I say occupation of Hebron or liberation? Right? Liberation. Interestingly, the enemy organization, Palestinian Liberation Organization. Everybody wants to liberate something, right? Guys, remember I mentioned a rabbi who liberated the Wailing Wall and then came to Hebron. That's Rabbi Shlomo Goren, okay, who comes to Hebron in 1967. That's a Palestinian school called the Cordoba School. Now the teachers and students are not going to walk up the stairs here. It's barbed wire. They're going to walk from the entrance up there. We're going to see the entrance. Okay? So they have access to their school. It's just this road here that they don't go on. Okay, there are tensions though between the two sides sometimes. Sometimes rocks get thrown in this direction, not only Jews throwing on the market below. Okay? In both directions is the reality. It's very exposed. That's why so much army presence, you understand, to secure it. Otherwise, the Jews couldn't live here without all the army. Guys, we're taking a right here. Yeah, we're taking a right here. I'll show you guys. This is a building called the House of Hadassah in the 1800s. In 1893, this was a medical clinic that served Arabs and Jews, mashumcha, equally, okay? Nowadays, there's a Jewish neighborhood. These are apartments. In the basement is a museum. So I'm just giving a broad outline. Nothing in depth here. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We Jews are called Israel after Jacob. They live, die, and are buried in Hebron. Now, we went to their burial place, but they actually lived up the hill in the Tel Hebron. This is the ancient city of Hebron. Okay? Now, there's, by the way, a nice timeline here. 3,800 years ago, Abraham the patriarch arrives in Hebron. King David appointed 3,000 years ago. Okay? Now, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When Jacob and his sons moved to Egypt, we multiply. After 400 years, we're no longer the sons of Jacob. We're now the tribes of Israel, right? The 12 tribes. The 10 sons, the 2 sons of Joseph become also tribes. Ephraim and Manasseh, we make up 12 tribes. Moses leads us to freedom. We're about to celebrate, we Jews, the story of the redemption from Egypt. And Passover next week, or a week and a half from now, is Passover, where we tell the story of the exodus from Egypt, as we do every year in our faith and our tradition. The exodus from Egypt. Moses leads the children of Israel out of Egypt into the Sinai. We receive the Torah, the Bible. We wander the desert for 40 years. Moses, unfortunately, dies in what is now Jordan, Moab, and it's Joshua who leads us back into the land. We come into the land and we split into 2 kingdoms, a northern kingdom called Israel, the southern kingdom called Judah, after the tribe of Judah, or Judea. 2 kingdoms. Now, the northern kingdom of Israel doesn't last long politically. Who invades? The Assyrian invasion, the Assyrians. How do we know about the Assyrians? Because ISIS blew up a lot of the monuments in Nineveh, northern Iraq. You know how it's the global pillaging of archaeology by the Louvre in Paris and the British Museum? If we hadn't had British pillaging Iraqi history, it might have been blown up by ISIS. That's the irony here, right? It's the British Museum protected it for posterity. Ironically, the Assyrians invade, destroy the northern kingdom of Israel. Some of the Israelites in the north flee south to the existing and still independent kingdom of Judah. Henceforth, the name for our entire ethnic group are called Jews. Jews from Judah or Judea. Okay, Jews. What's the name of our religion? Judaism, right? Now, the southern kingdom of Judah is pretty strong and independent, but who are the next invaders? It's called the Babylonians. When you guys say 586 BC, before Christ, we say BCE, before the Common Era. We don't refer to history in the name of Christ. BCE, 586 BCE. The Babylonians destroy the first temple. By the way, after David, Solomon comes, builds the first temple. Okay, the kingdom of Judah or Judea. But the Babylonians destroy the temple, exile the Jewish people to Iraq, and there we sing, we bring with us a national singer named Jimmy Cliff. He starts to sing, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and we remembered Zion. You know how Trump and Netanyahu make Iran to be the enemy number 1 of the world? What's an irony of history for us Jews? The Persian rulers, ancient Iranians, were our best friends because Cyrus the Great invades Babylon, crushes the Babylonian Empire, destroys it, and frees the Jews to come back to the Holy Land. Cyrus the Persian, in other words, was our best friend. Now, the Persians were followed by the Greeks. At first, Alexander the Great was a friend of the Jews. Do you know many ultra-Orthodox Jews have the name Alexander? Till today, Alexander. There's even a Hasidic branch called Alexander Hasidim. Okay? But, like often is the story, the friendly Greeks were replaced by 2 nasty successor kingdoms. In Egypt, the Ptolemies. In what is now Syria, the Seleucids. Seleucid Greeks. They take over the temple in Jerusalem, turned it into a center of paganism. The Jews have a rebellion to kick out the statues of Zeus, okay, and ritual and impurity. We celebrate the victory over the Greeks in a holiday called Hanukkah. The little bit of oil to rededicate the temple burns not 1 but 8 nights. That's Hanukkah holiday. Hanukkah. That ushers in the last period of Jewish national independence in the Holy Land. It's called the Hasmoneans, the Hashmonaim in Hebrew, the Hasmonean era. Now, 150 years, we Jews are tough and strong and independent. But in the history of empire building, do you think the Romans would sit quietly while the Hasmoneans have a free hand at the doorstep of Rome? Of course not. The Romans invade. At first, they want to keep the Jews happy, right? They appoint King Herod, and he does nice construction projects, like we saw the Tomb of the Prophets, Machpelah Cave. But King Herod ultimately is a puppet of the Romans. The Jews aren't satisfied with nice buildings. So the Jews, in 70 CE, the first great revolt against Rome. The Romans crush the revolt. They send the Jewish fighters to Rome. They put them in a Colosseum, let them battle it out to the death. Do you know those Jewish fighters were the gladiators of Rome? Do you look it up on Wikipedia, the Jewish gladiators of Rome? It's there. Put them in a Colosseum, let them battle out with other captured fighters for a blood sport. Even though they crushed the rebellion in 70 AD CE, okay, the Romans then made a statement. We captured Judah. In the ancient world, you made a statement by printing a coin. What does the coin say? It says, Udia capta. Guys, that's Latin. We captured Judah. It's the Romans who use the name Judah on their very coin to celebrate victory. And there it is, a Roman coin saying the word Judah or Judea. We captured it. Do you think the Jews, though, were going to sit quietly? They hid out in caves, and bubbling up were other rebellions like Masada. Masada's story is another minor rebellion. The greater rebellion was in 135 CE or AD. It's called the Bar Kokhba revolt. Bar Kokhba, 135. They employed what we would now call guerrilla warfare tactics. You notice how Russia tried to subdue Afghanistan? America tried to subdue Afghanistan. Who won in the end? The Taliban. When you have caves, right? Local landscape. Look at the Russians in Ukraine, right? The same tactic, you know? Like, if you're fighting on your own soil for freedom, you have the advantage, even of a larger army. But the Romans eventually overwhelmed with massive reinforcements and crushed again that second revolt. Guys, we're talking 135 Common Era. And that was the end of Jewish life, at least in Hebron. Now, some Jews, after that period when the Romans became Byzantines, were out of Hebron, but south of Hebron, there's actually a place called Susia, a settlement there today. They discovered a synagogue in the Byzantine era. All the Byzantine mosaics in the Holy Land are Christian themes. There were churches, but there was also a synagogue. The Jews fled and lived in the hills around Hebron in the intermediate years. Okay, so I wanted to add, when the Romans crushed the second revolt, they said, we're tired of those Jews trying to rebuild and reclaim Judah or Judea. We need a new narrative. They take the name of an extinct ethnic group from the Gaza coast called the Philistines and rename the whole country Syria-Palestyna, or Palestina Prima Province of Rome. You understand? The Romans invent the term Palestine, Palestina, as an intention to wipe out memory of this thing called Judea. My point is, this narrative war, Judah versus Palestine, is a 2,000-year-old historic narrative clash. You understand? Not just 67 war and after.
So does Palestine come from Philistine?
Yes, exactly.
It's a derivative.
Derivative. The Romans took the name Philistine and renamed the whole country Palestina. Okay? From the name Philistines. Yes. Intentionally. No more Judea. We need a new narrative. a new place name, okay? And basically, we Jews were in hiding in the Hebron Hills. And the next room is about how we managed to come back and rebuild Hebron in the Ottoman period. Remember I said return to Hebron after the Byzantine period, Crusader period. So basically, little farmers, basically, in the hills, where the only Jews that hid out. By the way, many Jews are known as having converted to Islam, and descendants of Palestinians in a village called Yatta, many believe are descendant from Israelites who became Muslim. That's another book and another chapter and another seminar, okay? I just mentioned it. But a few holdouts don't become Muslim, don't become Christian, and stay and hold on in Hebron. But it wasn't until 1492, when the Jews were expelled from Spain, that the great revival of Jewish Hebron begins. Okay, and this is when we build the synagogue we were at in 1540. Now, during the Ottoman years, the Jews were fluent in Arabic and learned to speak Arabic. The Arabs learned to speak the Jewish language of what? What was the language? Ladino, medieval Jewish Spanish. We spoke not Hebrew, but Ladino. Later, Ashkenazi Jews started to come to Hebron, and here's a picture of a yeshiva, okay, where religious Jews from Europe came and settled in Hebron. So the Arabs learned to speak their language, which is Yiddish. Yiddish. Now, Jews and Arabs got along well, generally speaking, in the Ottoman years. Many rabbis and mystics wrote holy books, some of which are here on display. Here in Hebron, they're buried in the Jewish cemetery of Hebron. Tzfat, Tiberias, Hebron, and Jerusalem, the four holy cities, thriving in this time period from the 15, 16, 17, 1800s, okay? In the Ottoman years. This was a thriving city with rabbis, Kabbalah, spirituality, mysticism, in the Ottoman years. Now, the harmony of Jews and Arabs started to unravel when the Ottoman Empire unraveled at the end of World War I, right? End of World War I. The British and the French, remember I told you this morning, create new countries, okay? Syria and Lebanon are French protectorates. In the Holy Land, the British now renamed the country, dusting off that old Roman name. Palestine is now called British Mandatory Palestine, right? Under the French and the British, there's new countries created. Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. So the Arabs of the Holy Land till that time weren't strong on pushing their Palestinian identity. It was around 1900 that it started to come into currency, but after World War I, all of the other countries are now separate and unique. Who are we? Now, under the British, the Jews started to immigrate more. There were some Jews in Hebron and Jerusalem, in our holy cities, but Jewish immigration, right? The socialist pioneers from Russia, instead of creating a Soviet Union over there, they said, let's do a socialist experiment community called the kibbutz. And they settled the frontiers of the Holy Land. Now the British issued the Balfour Declaration, allowing Jewish immigration. The Arabs of Palestine start to get nervous because their owned landowners, who were wealthy Palestinians living in Beirut and Damascus, are selling land under their feet to the Zionist movement. They start to view with suspicion their Jewish neighbors, especially when some Ashkenazi Jews joined the Middle Eastern Arabic and Spanish-speaking Jews. You understand? So there was harmony, but it started to get affected by what's happening around. But you know who put the real fuel on the flame? The British, when they appointed an extremist Muslim sheikh to be the Mufti of Palestine. His name was Haj Amin al-Husseini. He starts to incite the Muslim masses against the Jews and the British by claiming that the Jews are trying to take over the Western Wall. We had lobbied the British for the right simply to pray with the separation barrier at the wall. Until then, there was no men's side and women's side. They said, we're traditional. We would like just a tiny little fence. But they said this is part of our Al-Aqsa Mosque. Hajj Amin al-Husseini uses a new medium, not Facebook, not Twitter, it's called the radio. He uses the radio to scream, Muslims of Palestine, march on Jerusalem. This is now in 1929, to liberate Al-Aqsa. The blood of the Muslim martyrs, a lie, is flowing down the steps of Al-Aqsa. Of course, that's going to get people worked up, right? That is the beginning of Al-Aqsa as a unifying symbol among Palestinians, by the way, till today. Every Friday of Ramadan, the same thing is a unifying symbol for all Palestinians. But he uses it negatively to rally the troops in the name of Al-Aqsa, protecting Al-Aqsa. So in August of 1929, there are riots all over the Holy Land. 17 Jews in Tzfat are killed. Do you know the entire Jewish community of Gaza City? You know there were Jews in Gaza City? Did you know that? There were Jews all these years in Gaza City are forced to flee. The Haganah. Anyone heard of the Haganah? Jewish Defense Militia. Before the IDF, Israeli Army, pre-state Holy Land, in the 20s and 30s, there were Jewish militias like Etzel and Lehi and Haganah, Jewish Defense Militia. The largest one, come to the Jews of Hebron with a truckload of guns. They said, listen, the hatred is spreading. We highly suggest you take these guns to defend yourselves. You know what the Jews of Hebron said? Get out of here. We don't want the guns. We know our neighbors. We've lived peacefully for hundreds and thousands of years. But the next day, the Haganah leaves with their guns. The Muslims try to march towards Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. The British stop them halfway. This time they come back to their local mosque, screaming, massacre the Jews. And the next day, August 24th of 1929, begins a horrific day in Arab-Jewish relations till today. And that's the subject of the next room, and I want you to walk there, guys. Called the 1929 Hebron Massacre. The mosque, and they go to every Jewish family they can find. Men, women, and children are horrifically cut to pieces. Swords, knives, and axes. Here are actual murder weapons from the 29 massacre. Swords and axes. Okay? Here are pictures. By the time that the slaughter ended, 67 Jews, men, women, and children were killed. Here are pictures of some of the victims. Here are some of their gravestones that the Jordanians later destroyed. Now the mob, right? We're talking a mob, surrounded the house of the Jewish mayor. His name was Eliezer Dan Slonim. Okay? The mob screamed to the Jewish mayor. He was like city councilman representing the Jewish interests, but he helped everyone. He was on the board of Anglo-Palestine Bank, brought investment that benefited Arabs and Jews. So they knew him, the Muslims and Arabs of Hebron. They said, in his living room, people gathered for safety. They said, send out the strangers, we'll spare you, your wife and children. But he said, everyone gathered in my house are family here. There's no strangers here. They didn't like that answer. They burst in and killed every man, woman, and child. 25 people were slaughtered in his house. Guys, that is blood flowing down the steps of the Jewish community leader from murdered Jews. The only survivor in his living room was this 3-year-old boy who survived by falling under his mother's dead body. That's an axe mark on the forehead. That's his son, Shlomo Slonim. Every year, you should understand, there's an anniversary event for the 29 massacre. Up until 6-7 years ago, Shlomo came as an old man. You see the pictures of him older. It's the same eyes, the same scar, balding. And he passed away about 6 years ago. Shlomo Slonim. Yes, about 6-7 years ago. Now the mob continued slaughtering every Jew they could find. Until finally, the British, by the way, were here the whole time with guns, didn't lift a finger to help. When did the massacre finally stop? When the mob turned on an British officer. Then he bothered to pull out his guns and shot in the air, and that dispersed the rioters. The British the next day said, we have no way to protect you, and they evacuated all the Jews, kicked them out after the massacre, okay? And here are pictures, some survivors gathered at the hospital in Jerusalem, the survivors of the massacre. There's a group photo right there, okay? Every single person who was killed in horrific ways was documented. The pharmacist, this was a pharmacy, Beit Hadassah, and he was killed by his own patients. A baker thrown into his own oven. Like, you know, this guy in this house was killed after seeing his wife and daughters raped and murdered. Right in this spot, right here. Not so mentioned very often in the Palestinian narrative, but you have to understand that it's a traumatic event, not just for the Jews of Hebron in 1929. Till today, Israelis will say, Eliyahu, you think you can trust the Tariq guy? And Marwan Bassam and your tours, or your friend Ibrahim and your peace organization? Sure, it's like the Jews in Hebron. One day they're your friends. They're doing business together, like Jews in Hebron we're peas in a pod. But one day when the going gets rough, and this is a movement that often comes from people I know in Jerusalem, a knife in the back. Never trust an Arab. They'll smile, they'll be your friend, but okay, this is the trauma that the 29 massacre kind of, till today, relived in all the Israeli newspapers, by the way, once a year. Of course, many things happened before and after, but there's actually a book, guys, called 1929, Year Zero of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That this sparked so many things. You understand, most of the Jews of Hebron were not Zionist. Didn't want the weapons, but after the slaughter, they said, we have no choice but to invest and let the militias protect us the next time there's fighting. You understand? 1929 massacre, yes.
So what were they looking for originally when they entered the home? They were looking to oust the Ottomans. Is that what?
No, they were ousted. They were just killed Jews. Just killed
I
Jews.
understand, but when they first came into the room, who was the city councilman of the area, and what were they demanding? I didn't
No, they were saying, we know you. There are many non-family members seeking shelter in your house. If you kick them out to the crowd to let us kill them, we'll spare you and your children. That's what he said, but there's no strangers here. They're all my family, okay? All, in essence, they were all also like family. He wasn't going to kick out, you know? Every single death and murder is thoroughly documented. And by the way, excuses on the Palestinian side that I've heard is, no, it's actually the British who carried it out, or no, some of the old Orthodox Jews from Lithuania, their wives wore bikinis and therefore sparked Muslim hatred, or they were riding bicycles that the Muslims never saw before, and therefore that's a reason to slaughter them. Ridiculous things like that, okay? I hear this, okay? Everything I shared with you is thoroughly documented, and it's part of the Israeli psyche, even to my own friends who say, you think you do peace and dialogue work? What about the Jews of Hebron in 1929? You can never trust. But there's another part of the story that I think is a path towards healing. It's true, 67 Jews were slaughtered. Those are some of their pictures right there. But do you know that hundreds of Jews survived? There are 19 known Palestinian Muslim families, including Tariq's grandfather, who is known to have saved Jews. When the mob came to the house of an old man named Abu Shakr, there were Jews next door to this one, by the way, one door over. They said, stand aside, old man, an Arab old man. Stand aside, we're going to kill those Jews. You know what he said? He said, over my dead body. He said, you want to kill those Jews? You're going to have to kill me first. He said, they're my friends. He said, they're my family. You're going to kill them? You're going to have to kill me first. They didn't want to kill him, but they wanted him out of the way. So they stabbed him in the leg, hoping that he would pass out, live, and they could go in the house. But he stood firm with a gushing, bleeding leg. And because of his stubbornness, that family survived. Until now, 19 families are known to be heroes. Now, it's there, by the way. Look, Arabs who saved Jews. It's here, okay? And you have to kind of look for it, but it's kind of a footnote, okay? In Hebrew, Shouldn't we have, this is also, I've been lobbying this very museum. Shouldn't we have, as we document the slaughter, in this corner, there's lots of room, let's have a photo and exhibit an explanation. Abu Shakr, the Muslim hero who saved Jews. That is also part of the story that we tend to overlook or just make it a little footnote that's hard to find with Hebrew. Like you won't even know what you're looking at. You understand? So in other words, each one of us will emphasize the part of the history, whereas reality is more than is complex.
Yeah.
It's not only black and white. There were many Muslim heroes who saved Jews from the mob, and that's part of the story. Now, let's fast forward to 1967. No Jews now, okay? Gone. When the Israeli army comes back to Hebron, remember I told you when they came into Hebron, the Palestinians flew white flags of surrender. Not a single bullet fired. There were bullets in Jerusalem, Golan Heights, Sinai, not Hebron. Why? The Arabs were afraid of retribution. Now the Jews have an army. They're going to get revenge for 29. You understand how it connects now to 1967? Now the Jews have guns. We surrender. And that's the next chapter I'll tell you, after 67. But when the Jews came back to Hebron, it was in the ashes of the slaughter of 29 that motivated them specifically to start to live in Hebron. Guys, in 1979, 15 women and 45 children come through this window with suitcases and come to squat in this building. Remember, it's a closed military zone. It had stood empty since the days of the massacre. The Arabs, I heard a rumor that they were afraid it was haunted by the ghosts of the murdered Jews. Okay? They came and took over this building, squatting. Army discovered them the next morning and said, "You're here legally. Whoever leaves this building can't come back." Guys, for 9 months, the women and children, that's the group, the original group of women and children, and them coming into windows. Why no men? Why only women and children? Guys, what's your theory? Why no men? PR, does it look good for a Jewish Israeli army? If the husbands are there, you can be a little bit rougher. But with women and kids, can you lift a finger to drag them out? So cute. So feminine, right? Guys, this is to win over the public and the prime minister. PR strategy to win over Jewish public, you understand? And our prime minister. For 9 months, they live and they pray here. Guys, these kids had school here. They snuck in food through the windows here, okay? That's an actual picture. Now, where were the men? Every Friday, they were singing and dancing, not far away, to welcome the Sabbath. That's them singing on the street. See that picture on the bottom? Welcoming Shabbat, singing on the street. Now, May 5th, 1980, there was a shooting and bombing attack. Palestinian militants noticed that they're an easy target. We know when and where they're going to be. So 6 men are killed in a shooting and bombing attack. The Israeli government said because of that terrorist attack, instead of trying to kick the Jews out of this building, we're going to legalize their presence. And a few months later, they add the apartments above, and that is how Beit Hadassah became their first reclaimed original Jewish property, or, if you want to call it, the first old city of Hebron settlement, including the apartment directly above us of Noam Arno that we met with. Now, how do we know one society's freedom fighter is another society's terrorist, or vice versa? The perpetrator of that attack, of the 6 men, was freed in a prisoner exchange from Israeli prison. And guess what? Taysir Abu Sneni, the perpetrator of this attack, became such a hero in Palestinian society that he was elected the mayor of the city of Hebron. Taysir Abu Sneni is proud of that action. And in fact, that got him elected. You understand? They call him freedom fighter because in their narrative, some would say, if an occupying power by the Geneva Convention moves into occupied territory, if you send civilians into occupied territory, those civilians are a branch of a military occupation. Therefore, legitimate resistance to occupation means you can kill men, women, and children anytime you like, because they're not legitimate human beings. They're systems of a military, they're how you say, appendages of a military occupation. That is the rationale for what they would call the resistance to the Zionist occupation. Of course, Israelis call it a terrorist attack and vicious, violent terror in the name of liberation, when it's actually we're, freeing the territory and not occupying it. Guys, you understand how far the divide is for Hebron? And you were asking, there's a city of Hebron. What Noam showed the map is the city of Hebron. But you're right, there's a district of Hebron from Beersheba to Bethlehem. It's the county, like city and county. You have the district of Hebron, and then you have the city center of Hebron. Okay? And the mayor of the city of Hebron is that person who did this very attack. Okay? Look it up. He's on YouTube. He's on Al Jazeera. Taysir Abu Snaini was scorched in global media 2 months ago when he's put out a hit in Hebron. There's too many wild dogs. You get 20 shekels for every dog you kill. All the animal rights groups went in an uproar. He backed down in 20 seconds. So of course, no, we care about our dogs. We just don't have we need more funding for our humane society. Okay, and he made good. But again, it's more legitimate to kill a Jewish human than it is a dog, And this is the reality of the politics in Hebron. Okay? Again, they would say our Israeli military do similar XYZ. Again, that's another narrative, all right? Guys, I covered about 4,000 years of history in 35 minutes. And, okay? We have a last chapter, the biblical city up the hill. Okay? The tomb of Jesse and Ruth. And we're going to see ancient Hebron. We have to meet our driver outside to take us there. Guys, some of you asked about the checkpoint that we usually go through to get between H1 and H2. Checkpoint, this is the main checkpoint between H2 and H1. Israeli-controlled Hebron. Behind that will be Palestinian traffic cops. Whenever there's clashes in Hebron, which is frequently, Palestinians will aim at this particular checkpoint. That's why you see the high fences, is to prevent rock throwing, okay? All right, so this is the main checkpoint, separating H1 and H2. Now the Palestinians you see walking here are locals who the army allows to go in and out of their homes here, okay? But if you're not a local, except for Ramadan, this time, outsiders are allowed in during the Ramadan meals. But generally, the rest of the year, it's restricted to those who live here, okay? So this is one of the front lines, guys, this very street, bordering H1 and H2, okay? Now we're going to go, you see the soldier standing here? Most Palestinians would say that's an occupier. Israelis would say freedom fighter. If the soldiers ask us questions, and they sometimes do, we'll just wait a few minutes. Guys, 40 minutes of a walking tour. We're going to go to a viewpoint. We're going to see biblical tombs. We're going to go through some ancient olive groves. But you can leave things here. With Maher, it's safe. Just take your passports, though. Do not leave IDs. It's always important, no matter where you are in the Holy Land, carry your passport at all times. You never know, okay? You never know. 3 of the 4 Jewish neighborhoods. This is the last one that the government allowed to be built in the late 80s. But it was first caravans. You understand? Caravans you can easily remove for the sake of politics. If you need a forklift. But they wanted to build a more permanent structure. But the government always said no. It wasn't until 1997 when the H1, right, 80% of the city of Hebron, no Israeli army. It's controlled by the Palestinian Authority. No army there. Before these soldiers set up checkpoints here, a Palestinian terrorist uses the new freedom. He comes with a knife into the home of an elderly rabbi. The rabbi's name is Rabbi Shlomo Ra'anan. By the way, the rabbi lived in the apartment right behind this playground, behind that bush there, okay? The terrorist comes into the rabbi's house with a knife. He stabs the rabbi in the heart. His wife was a nurse. There's nothing she can do to save his life. He dies in his apartment. Netanyahu, this is in term number 1. Now he's in term number 6. Okay, I think 6 is overdoing it, okay? But in the early days, he felt regret, I think, about signing the Hebron Accords. He said it's been a government decision because of the murder of the rabbi to allow construction of a big permanent structure, this building. By the way, we're about to go to the roof of this building. This is where we have the best view of the whole city of Hebron, okay? But in order to build any tall structure, you need to dig in the foundation. They dig down. Guess what they discover? An ancient stairwell. And it's dated from the Middle Bronze Age, 3,800 years ago, when Abraham would have walked. In other words, this is a biblical city stairway, gateway to the biblical city, this very stairway. See that? Okay? An important stairway from the biblical era. Also underneath there, they found rooms that were dated from the time of Hezekiah. They found pottery. On the pottery, in Hebrew writing, it said to the king, Hebron, to the king, dedicated to the king, Hebron, from Hebron. The day after the rabbi was murdered in his apartment, right, 1997, the Palestinian family that lives to my left, I'm not going to point because they still live there, okay? I'm not going to point. Sometimes they're looking from their windows, okay? They're called the Abu Aisha family. The family here flies a huge Palestinian flag in solidarity with the murder. Now, the elderly man who lives here was friendly with the rabbi across the street. There were good relations between the Jews here and the Arabs here, Palestinians here. But the day after the rabbi was murdered, flying a huge flag celebrating his murder is a provocative act. And some of the kids on this side of the divide, in that context, throw rocks and eggs at the house here. Human rights activists rush to help this family build a cage around their house. They say to protect them from settler violence. I'm not rationalizing throwing rocks and eggs, even with a flag or not. But I want to make it clear, none of the human rights organizations that condemn that the family has to live here in a cage ever mention. They never mention the flag flown in the face of the kids that provoked this round of retribution. That never gets mentioned. You understand, this family now is the front poster child for look at apartheid in Hebron. They live in a cage to protect themselves from the violent settlers. Right. Now you look at a lot of these websites, they'll post videos of radical teenagers doing wild things that I would be abhorred by too. But if you look closely, and I've showed them to some of the Jews here and said, oh yeah, that was when so-and-so was a wild teenager. That was 15 years ago. He's grown up, he's matured, he has his own children. He tries to keep, better. You know what I'm saying? It's easy to post an old video and say, look what happened yesterday. And then look what happened yesterday. 10 years later, look what happened yesterday. You understand? So it's not that it never happened. And you'll see videos. It's appalling. Some wild teenagers do appalling things. By the way, the other side also, as we heard today, lots of violence towards the Israeli Jewish side. Unfortunately, this very street and corner, this spot here is one of the front lines of the conflict. Okay? Ancient history, new Jewish neighborhood, living here, inspired by that history and coming into clash with our Palestinian neighbors. Guys, this little scene here is a microcosm of the whole conflict. You understand? And needing cages and, protection, security measures to protect yourselves, etc. Guys, let's go see the view at the top of the building. When we leave the building, we don't come back this way. We're going to go out to the right. But follow me to the stairs up here. The best view of all of Hebron.
I was the only man in attendance. Just a bunch of mothers and a kid.
This is your best view of downtown Hebron. Check out the view. Guys, this is the ancient Jewish cemetery. You see this open space here? Mm-hmm. In the middle, where the Israeli flag is, see that?
Yeah.
To the right of that is the modern cemetery. Yeah. But behind it, you see the flat cement slabs with the white rows. That's the victims of the 29 massacre. Up on the left, there's a little room. You see where the stairs go up in the middle? That's the rabbi. He went down into the tomb of the patriarchs, and he took out the sword that the Ottoman sultan lost. Okay, and there's a magical story of how he came out alive with the sword and had a vision of Abraham. Okay, he's called Abraham Azulai. Now, if you look up towards the rusty fence to the left, you see flat stone slabs on that whole side of the hill.
Yeah.
That's remnants of the 1st century AD CE.
Wow.
Jewish Karaite. The Karaite Jews lived here, and that's their cemetery. Still here,
Wow.
and it's still there from the 1st century. Guys, an army base below us. You see the snake with wings?
Yeah.
Right? That's a symbol. The Israelis will have paratroopers, like when a snake has wings. That was a curse. That was their fighting symbol, guys. The snake with wings, paratroopers. They're not living it like kings, are they? It's glorified shipping crates. See that? But that's where we're heading next. That's the last stop on our tour. That's the tomb of Jesse and Ruth. It looks like a fortress, right? It looks like a fortress, but the tomb of Abraham, we call it Machpelah, the Herodian walls, standing proudly amongst the old city of Hebron. That's the hills of the West Bank. On a clear day, you can see Jordan. The Dead Sea would be below us, guys. Okay, that Dead Sea is over there. Usually, the Palestinians will point out that the army took over this tall building. Okay? And they did. They don't allow the upper floors because the army determined that it's easy sniper position. So the army says no one can touch it.
Yeah.
Okay, sniper position. Guys, downtown Hebron right below you. See thriving, honking,
Yeah.
right? City center.
Driving traffic jam.
Usually when it's not Ramadan, you cross into this first. You start your tour here before you go to the tomb. But because it's Ramadan, we switch the order. Here's the symbol, the snake with wings. The snake with wings, okay? The Bin Ladens. Yeah, there could be clashes. Yeah, could be clashes. It's widely expected during Ramadan that there will be clashes. By the way, this is tame. Sometimes we hear much more intense. We've witnessed many clashes during our tour days. I always just say during those tour days, stay close to your tour guide and don't run into the middle of the action, insisting to take a photo. The only tourists ever injured in those clashes, not in my groups, were like Japanese, like, oh, I want to take a picture, of the action. And they get hit by a rock or hit by, fire, by Israel, back and forth. Don't run in the middle of an active demonstration. You're putting your life at risk. Okay, guys? So, it's a long touring day. We're down to the last 15 minutes of our tour, okay? This is the tomb of Jesse and Ruth, according to Jewish tradition. Not this stone they just put in a few months ago. But behind this wall, perhaps, is a burial cave. But there's an ancient tradition that the Jews used to come here. Kingdom of Judah, or Judea. 7 years, he moves his capital to Jerusalem for the last 33 years. That's why it's called the City of David. But here was the first capital, okay? So it makes sense, according to tradition, if his great-grandmother Ruth outlives him and she passes away when he's king, he'd want to have her buried close, along with his father, of course. Okay. Now, the archaeologists say that this building is Byzantine, 400 to 500 CE AD. Okay? Sorry to disappoint you. They're brand new. But if you look in this pillar here, they say this is probably from the Roman period, even older. I used to say it was from King David's early palaces. I was corrected. Maybe it was. Who knows? Okay, but at least from the Roman period. You see? Roman period, Byzantine period. And the arch here, they say, is a Crusader thing when you have this specific kind of arch. Okay? If you ask, by the way, if you dig underneath here, for sure, the open field that we're going to walk out as we're ending here, there's olive trees there, 700 to 800 years old. And the other side of that open field is a section of ancient wall, 4,000 years old, from the Canaanite era, early Middle Bronze Age. So when Abraham came into this city, there was an existing city of Hebron. Okay? Let me tell you the Palestinian narrative. The Palestinians who live in the house right above that fence. See that fence there? They say, you Israelis took over our mosque. This was a tiny 10-person mosque, okay? A tiny space. According to Muslim tradition, 40 Muslim rebels were executed by the Crusaders. When they were executed, Muslim rebels against the Crusader occupation. Executed, their heads roll into the valley below. That's why the street that we walked on, they call Shuhada Street or Martyr Street. Remember I told you it's not about the martyrs that you think. The martyrs against Crusader occupation. And they call this the Mosque of the 40 Martyrs, or simply the Mosque of 40. Masjid al-Arba'in, the Mosque of 40. This little room is now a synagogue, okay? Helpful explanation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I must so.
Okay. All right, we have a little bit more going down the hill with the ancient olive trees, and we have more. If you want to see, I can show you a synagogue. Okay. So guys, we usually kiss. You can do this. We kiss a mezuzah. Look at beautiful with crystals in it. Okay, there's a parchment there, guys. Sorry, small synagogue. Here, holy books. Here we keep the Torah. Okay, we keep the Torah, like we saw synagogue today. Torah is in here. Lock and key. Okay, holy books. So it's a little study center, like a mini synagogue / kollel, a place where married men study and learn and crash out from exhaustion. Okay, all right. Yes. Guys, look. Massive ancient doorway. There's something also imprinted in that door. I don't even know what it is. But you see, that these are massive ancient stones, thousands of years old. Incredible, right?
And are those just rooms back there, or it looks like a tunnel?
There are rooms. Yeah, there are rooms.
It's a mini door.
Yes, ancient room. Guys, if you stand here for just 30 seconds of silence, you can almost sense the unique ancient vibration from this place. Yes, no, that's new mortar. They're patching up the ancient room so it doesn't collapse. These from the Byzantine era, probably around 2,000-year-old Roman era pottery. Okay, it's all over. If you want a souvenir, don't say I told you, but no one will notice if it's one little piece in your luggage. You're not digging anything up. It's just pebbles on the ground, okay?
Right there, huh?
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's all over the place. Because it's been raining, there's always new pieces coming up. I have a bucket at home. My wife eventually said, stop bringing them home. It's before we leave. We have to go fast. This way. 4,000-year-old city walls.
How old are these olive trees?
They say conservative estimate 800 years old. Probably much older, but don't let me quote that. At least 800. I think that one's older. Look at that.
The thickness of it, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the mysteries of the ancient world.
It's not much, but it does.
Okay, thank you. Definitely.
I thank you, because
Yes.
I ran out of the money and I'm going
No
back.
worries, guys. Guys, come here, come here. I want to show you this section. Guys, this is at least 3,800 years old. Canaanite city walls. What do you think, guys? This was probably one of the city gates. Okay?
Can we take this piece home?
Yeah, you can take the whole wall home. Yes, in your suitcase. Guys, what do you think? Impressive? Incredible. 3,800 years old Canaanite era. So Abraham came, you understand, to an existing city. It wasn't that he built it. It was like he moved in and then it became known as a Hebrew city. But the Canaanites were here. Guys, the last spot is here. There's an artistic sketch of what they think the city walls look like. You want to see that? And then we're going, okay? Then we leave. Guys, you have to tip extra for this. I'm on overtime now. I'm on overtime.
So how long theoretically would it have been here before Abraham got here?
Good question. Good question. I mean, probably the early settlement goes back to Neolithic man. This is one of the centers of civilization, you know, between Mesopotamia and Egypt. This is the Holy Land, and this is Hebron. Jericho, Hebron, these are the ancient cities of the Holy Land. Jericho too. Megiddo, also pretty ancient. Guys, what we saw, that exposed section, you notice how it was a cross like this. It was probably a corner that we were looking at, something like this. See that? A city gate, a wall, and a gate. Okay, so that's what we were looking at. I don't include it in the tour because we got to go, but if you go up the hill, 2 of the largest ancient ritual baths that were ever dug out in the Holy Land are right here. 6 years ago dug out. With a lot of opposition from the Palestinians, because anytime history supports the Jewish narrative, then it's the settler narrative. It's not neutral history.
Yeah.
It's the settlers, it's the Jews, it's the Zionists, it's the occupiers. And so they're not happy about the excavation. Didn't help that it was Ariel University that did the excavation, which is a university that's in a West Bank settlement, okay? Okay, but they found the ancient ritual baths, and that was always a Jewish custom to purify yourselves in ancient baths, because they found also next to the ancient bath a pottery factory and an olive oil factory, okay? They think they were making olive oil, purifying themselves, taking it to the temple in Jerusalem. It's from the Second Temple period. Yes.
Thank you so much for
Very welcome.
for showing me and for telling me so much, and to my viewers, God bless you. And whenever you are in Kraków, Poland, let me know. I will give a tour also.
Okay.
All
All right. Send me a link. You're going to send me a link.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. So.
Thank you, sir.
Widzieliście dziś Hebron z perspektywy, której nie znajdziecie w podręcznikach ani w nagłówkach gazet. To miasto świętych grobów i przeklętych ulic, wspólnej historii i rozdzielonych serc. Dla jednych to dowód powrotu do korzeni, dla innych symbol okupacji. Ale pod tymi murami, na skrzyżowaniu 3 religii, wciąż bije jedno serce. Marzenie, że może kiedyś potomkowie Abrahama, Izaaka i Jakuba znów usiądą przy jednym stole. Jeśli ta podróż skłoniła cię do myślenia, podziel się nią i opowiedz innym, co zobaczyłeś. Bo prawdziwa zmiana zaczyna się od zrozumienia.